Good evening. Thank you for joining us this evening. We will open the program with prayer by BPW Beverly Hills Jackson.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, as we gather here today to commemorate and celebrate the remarkable contributions of women throughout history, we're filled with gratitude for the countless women who have paved the way for progress, equality, and justice. We recognize the strength, resilience, and courage that women have demonstrated in shaping our world and shaping our lives. As we embark on this Women History program, we invite your presence to be with us. Open our hearts and minds to receive the wisdom and inspiration that these stories of courage and resilience impart. May we be empowered and encouraged to continue the work of advocating for gender equality and justice in our communities and beyond. Father, bless each person here today and each household represented. We thank you for the life of our departed, beloved Neweta BPW sister, Mary Elder, and for the times we were able to serve together. We know, Father, that you made no mistakes. May her memory forever live in our hearts. Be with her family and strengthen them also during this difficult time. In the name of Jesus, we say amen.
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 Thank you, Beverly. The Neweta Club of the National Association of Negro Business Professional Women's Club Incorporated is pleased to celebrate Women's History Month with special guests, friends, and family of Neweta members. The national office requires each local club to celebrate Women's History Month each year. The Neweta Club, along with the Southeast District, decided to use the National Women's History Alliance 2024 theme, Women Who Advocate for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Neweta has been in touch with the National Women's History Alliance over the last several years by adopting their annual theme, purchasing the annual theme supplies, and are in receipt of relevant communications throughout the year, objectives and outreach on behalf of women who make a difference in our country and world. The remaining agenda items will be followed as shown on the screen. BPW Brenda Martin and other designated Neweta members will share information about our honorees. We will hear from BP Mildred Addy, who will tell us about Mary Ann Shad Carey. BPW Octavia Mahone will tell us about Francis E.W. Harper. BPW Belinda Presley will tell us about Mary Church Terrell. And BPW Jamaica Powell will tell us about Ida B. Wells Barnett. Following the Women's History Month presentation, Brenda will proceed to announce the special presentations to be given by members of the Coweta NANCP unit. The final presenter will be the first Vice President, Radidra Hill, who will close the program with announcements and remarks. It is my pleasure to congratulate Ms. Nikki Baker, who is serving as our technical expert tonight, on her successful efforts to win the vote for the Southeast District Governor of NANBPWC Incorporated. Her term starts July 1st, 2024, and Neweta looks forward to working with her. As I close, I want to remember the two Neweta friends and the two Neweta sisters that we recently lost. In January, we lost BPW Alice Malcolm, and this month we lost BPW Mary Elder. Both ladies were charter members and they were pillars of our organization. We will miss them greatly. Thank you. Brenda?
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening, everyone. As Kathy said, the National Women's History Alliance is a resource that we use each year. And this organization boasts of writing women back into history. The Alliance website is open to anyone as long as credit is given to the Alliance. Neweta has used this resource for years, and we're really the first NANBPWC club to use the theme and materials. And I was happy to see that the Southeast District this year moved to use the theme. Hopefully, eventually, its use will be extended to our national level. The 4 women we have chosen made history as pioneers who advocated for equity, diversity, and inclusion. We will share that information with you now.
Mary Ann Shaw Carey said, "We should do more and talk less." In 1848, her quote was in a letter to Frederick Douglass. Mary Ann Shaw Carey, born October 9, 1823, died June 5, 1893, was a writer, an educator, a lawyer, an abolitionist, and the first African American woman in North America to edit and publish a newspaper. Born in Wilmington, Delaware, she was raised in a home that often served as a refuge for fugitive slaves. Her parents were abolitionists, but even as free Blacks living in the North, they faced deep-seated discrimination and segregation because African American children were not allowed to be educated in Delaware. Her parents moved the family to Pennsylvania in 1833. In 1850, when Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act, Mary Ann and members of her family left the U.S. for Canada. Well-educated, vivacious with determination shining from her sharp eyes, she threw herself single-handed into the great Canadian pilgrimage when thousands of hunted Black men hurried northward and crept beneath the protection of the Lions of W.E.B. Du Bois, wrote as Chad Carey. When the Civil War began, African Americans from the North to fight for the Union Army. In 1870, she graduated from Howard University with a law degree. She then thrusted herself into the suffrage movement, addressing the House Judiciary Committee in January. Throughout her life, and a woman on the fringe. This seeming contradiction, Mary Ann Carey would be viewed simultaneously as an object of respect and leadership, and as an with Jane wrote, it is central to the story of African American women.
But the first thing that we want to say about Mary Carey is that she was a writer and the first female newspaper editor. So a lot of her quotes are now famous. The one that we showed before is one of the most famous, and you have that quote on t-shirts. National Historical Landmark, and it's located in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Again, we see her quote, and she had many of those. Now, we also, before, saw her home, and her home is also a National Historic Landmark. It's located. We would now have information about Ms. Harper, Octavia.
Good evening. Francis E.W. Harper said, and I quote, "I know that no nation can gain its full measure of enlightenment and happiness. If one half of it is free and the other half is fair, unquote. Francis Lee W. Hawkins, September 24, 1825 to February 27, 1911, was an American African abolitionist, suffrage poet, teacher, public speaker, and writer. Born free in Baltimore, Maryland, she had a long and prolific life, publishing her first book of poetry at the age of 20, making her one of the first American published writers. At 67, she wrote her widely praised novel, Iola Leroy, in 1892. In 1851, alongside William Steele, chairman of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society, she helped escape slaves along the Underground Railroad. She began public speaking after joining the American Anti-Slavery Society in 1853. In 1894, she helped the National Association of Colored Women, NAACP, and served as vice president. She is considered the mother of African American journalism. Her moving quote on slavery appears large on the walls at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. In 2018, Francis was inducted to the National Abolition Hall of Fame in New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, Octavia. And some of the other things we'd like to share about Ms. Harper. If we could get to the screen showing her book. I just wanted you to see what the cover of a book looked like in 1892. As Octavia said, it was released in the 1800s, and that's a cover. That's a copy of the cover. This is a cover for her famous poems. One that I just loved is called Bury Me in a Free Land. It is a beautiful poem, and she really had quite a bit of poetry published. She had several collections. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Can everybody hear me? This is her home, and of course, it is a National Historic Landmark in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We will now hear some interesting information about Ms. Terry.
Mary Church Terrell said, "The political subjection of women in the United States can be likened only to a relic of barbarism." Mary Church Terrell was born September the 23rd, 1863, and died on July the 24th, 1954. Articulated the needs of the African American community for over 6 decades and represented the deep support for women's rights among women of color. She had a privileged upbringing in Memphis as the daughter of the first African American millionaire in the South. Brilliant and multilingual, she was 33 when she became president of the new National Association of Colored Women in 1896, helping to build it into the premier African American women's organization in the country. With the resolve and skills of a diplomat, Mary repeatedly challenged white suffragists not to abandon their African American sisters. Addressing the National American Women's Suffrage Association convention in 1898. 20 years later, she picketed the White House, demanding the vote. She was also active in the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. After the 1920 victory, Mary said, "We women have now a weapon of defense, which we have never possessed. It will be a shame and reproach to us if we do not use it." Thank you.
Thank you, Belinda. I believe the next slide will have a picture of her home. It is also designated as a National Historical Landmark, and it was designated as such in 1975. And of course, it is not open to the public. Next slide. The marker is located in Northwest Washington, D.C., honoring Ms. Terrell, as you can see. Next slide, please. Facts. She was one of the first African American women to earn a college degree. She was the first African American in the United States to be appointed to a school board in a major city. She was a charter member of the NAACP in 1909, and she was a founder, one of the founders of the National Association of College Women in 1923. Our last honoree is Ms. Wells Barnett. Jamaica.
Thank you. Ida B. Wells Barnett was an investigative journalist, educator, and an early leader in the civil rights movement. She was one of the founders of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People. She arguably became the most famous African American woman in America during a life that was centered on combating prejudice and violence. She was born into slavery in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, she moved with some of her siblings to Memphis, Tennessee, where she found work as a teacher. She also co-owned a newspaper, the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight. In 1892, her newspaper condemned the racist lynching of 3 African American men. The paper was destroyed by a mob, and facing death threats, she moved to Chicago. Ida became the leading voice against lynching in the United States, exposing it as a terror tactic intended to intimidate and oppress African Americans. She was outspoken regarding her beliefs as an African American female activist and faced regular public disapproval, including that of leaders with diverging viewpoints from both the civil rights movement and the women's suffrage movement. In 1913, she refused to accept a segregated march in the rear suffrage march in Washington, D.C., marching instead with the Illinois delegation and supportive white allies. This is Ida B. Wells Barnett. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamaica. Next slide, please.
You're welcome.
The marker you see on the screen is currently located in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Next slide, please. Please. Her writing about lynching was published in several newspapers. When her teaching contract was not renewed, she went into journalism, and the pamphlet Southern Horrors was one of the pamphlets that she published. Next slide, please. This is a full-size statue, and it is located in downtown Memphis, Tennessee. It is called The Light of Truth. Next slide, please. This is a nice picture of her family. Her husband was a lawyer and owned a newspaper also, as Ms. Wells invested in a newspaper of her own. They had 4 children together, and her husband, a widower, already had 2 sons. So this is a picture of Miss Wells and her husband, Wells Barnett, her husband, and their 4 children. Thank you for that. And really, this ends the Women's History Month part of our program this evening. As you heard, our honorees were educators, and they valued education back in the 1800s. Also, it is a delight to know that some of them were founders and participated with the early NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. So it gives us a natural transition to our special presentation this evening. It is my honor to introduce Dr. Cynthia Finney, President of the Coweta NAACP unit. Dr. Finney will share information about our local unit and introduce the presenters, Attorney Christina Joseph and Dr. Rebecca Gibson, who are co-chairs of our NAACP Education Committee. They will share information about our Black students' performance on the Georgia Milestones Assessment System. Dr. Cynthia Finney, PT and DPT, is a native of Newnan. Dr. Finney is the Director of Rehabilitation Services at Piedmont Newnan Hospital, where she has been employed for the past 30 years. She received a BA degree in psychology from the University of Georgia, a BS in physical therapy from Georgia State University, and a doctorate in physical therapy from Alabama State University. Dr. Finney believes in the power of positive engagement with youth and the community, as exhibited by her involvement in professional and civic organizations. She is a member of the American Physical Therapy Association, the NAACP, where she serves as president of the Coweta County branch, the Newnan chapter of Continental Societies Incorporated, and Phi Phi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, where she is a charter member and has served as the first president. She currently serves as chair of the board for the Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta, Newnan Coweta, and Howard Warner clubs, the Successful Kids Learning Solutions, and Central Education Center, and the Central Education Center. She is a former commissioner for the Farmer Street Cemetery. Dr. Finney contributes her success to the positive input from her family, physical therapy mentors, as well as the many people who are really too many to list from the community. She is a proud mother of Katrina and Maximilian and grandmother of Kendra Couture. Dr. Finney.
Thank you, Brenda, for that introduction, and good evening, everybody. I want to say thank you to Neweta for inviting the Coweta County NAACP representatives to participate on your Women's History program. In February, we celebrated our 115th Founders Day of the NAACP, and you've already highlighted 2 of our founders, Ida B. Wells Barnett, and Mary Church Terrell. But we also had another woman who was a founder, and that was Mary White Overton, which shows Mary White Overton was a white female, but the NAACP was founded with a diverse group of people, with the majority of them at that time actually being white people. The NAACP was created to address racial injustice as a response to the horrific violence and specifically lynching of Black people. Ironically, today we are still fighting racial injustice and inequality. The NAACP is the largest and the oldest, the baddest and the boldest, the most loved and most hated, the most feared and revered, the most cussed and discussed civil rights organization in America. The Coweta County branch of the NAACP has been supporting Black residents of Coweta County for over 20 years. I invite you to join us in our efforts. Our branch has several committees that align with our national committees. And tonight, our education committee is being highlighted, and you will have a presentation by Christina and Rebecca Gibson, our co-chairs. Rebecca and Christina.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Finney, for that introduction. And thank you, Ms. Brenda, for inviting us to speak today. You can still see it, right? I'll make sure I'm not having any technical issues. Got it. Okay, thank you so much. Good evening. The Education Committee of the Coweta County branch of the NAACP, we meet on a monthly basis. We have several initiatives that we are working on. But last year, we started digging into specifically Black student performance on the Georgia Milestone Test. We have had a lot of spirited, passionate debate about some of the findings that we've seen in the data regarding Black student performance. And we are working on sharing that information with community organizations who might be interested in helping our Black students improve on their performance. So in case you're not familiar, the Georgia Milestone Assessment System, or what people may refer to as the GMAS, is a statewide test that students from grades 3 through grade 12 will take just about every year. It's the same test across the state. I know when I was a child, it was like the CRT, or you had the ITBS. You had several different types of tests that we would take to assess, student performance, but also kind of the quality of the education being delivered in a school system. So just high level, you can see there in grade from elementary school through middle school, students will have a test every single year, typically at the end of the school year in May. And then in high school, there is a test at the end of certain courses, right? Those are what we call end of course tests. The stated purpose of the GMAS, as stated by the Georgia Department of Education, is to serve as a critical measure of student achievement and academic readiness. There are kind of three main goals or purposes of this assessment system. Number one is school and district accountability. So again, this test measures student mastery of certain Georgia academic areas on an annual basis. And so school systems are able to assess the quality of the teaching within their school system and within specific schools as well. This is also kind of a critical measure of students' mastery or proficiency of key subject areas on their academic journey, right? So this assessment is designed to independently and objectively measure a student's performance versus what might be like a student's grades, which could be impacted by behavior or grade inflation. or other factors, right? This is supposed to be objective. And then lastly, the test itself can have an impact on a student's academic journey. In elementary school, if a student doesn't score at a certain level, it can impact whether or not a student is promoted. And in high school, the end of course test serves as a final exam for those courses and can impact the student's grade, which we know can be very important for qualifying for scholarships in the state of Georgia. So what I will say with this test is the state has tried very hard to kind of streamline and make the assessment, or the way to evaluate the assessment, very easy for teachers and parents. It essentially breaks down performance at 4 achievement levels. On one side, you have number ones, which is our beginning learners. So if a student tests as a 1 in a subject area, that student has not demonstrated any proficiency in that subject area and will require significant or substantial academic support in order to be successful in the next grade. Then you have your 2s. So if a student scores a 2 in the subject area, they are deemed a developing learner. So they have partial mastery or partial proficiency of that subject area, but still will need additional academic support in order to be successful at the next level. And then you have your 3s and your 4s. Your 3s are proficient learners. They're right on track, right where they're supposed to be, doing well. And your 4s are your distinguished learners. Those are the ones who are advanced. They're well beyond the current level, and thus, no intervention is necessary. So obviously, when you look at this, you want to minimize the numbers of 1s and 2s you have, and hopefully have maximize numbers of 3s and 4s. And if you talk to educators, you often hear them say, oh, I have lots of 1s and 2s this year, so we're kind of having to slow down in my class and work on some basic things. Or you'll hear them say, I have lots of 3s and 4s, and so we're just like moving really quickly. So that's kind of how they break it down to make it easier. So the state of Georgia, to its credit, has the last 2 years provided a dashboard, an interactive dashboard. Anyone can go on their website and get this data as to student performance on this milestone assessment. So this is only for the last 2 years. And so this dashboard, you're able to filter the data by the year, again, last 2 years just for this data so far, your region, your specific school system, and even down to your specific school to understand how students performed on the test. And then you can further break down the data by, the type of student, the grade level, and the test that was administered. So in this case, if you look at this dashboard, I've selected that, I want to understand from a race and ethnicity standpoint, how 3rd graders in the state of Georgia performed on the English language arts portion of the GMAS. So here are all the various breakdowns for ethnicity. You have your Asians, Black, Hispanic, Native American, white, and then we have this kind of catch-all multiracial. And as you can see here, for the state of Georgia, 3rd grade, English language arts, over 70% of the students who took this test are below proficiency in English language arts, all right, over 70%. And you can see how that compares to other ethnic groups, including those ethnic groups where English, for many of them, is likely not their first language. So that's kind of what the dashboard looks like. It's at this link. Anyone who's curious about your individual schools within Coweta County, I encourage you to go look at those and see kind of what their performance had, how they performed on the test. So now I want to pivot to Black student performance in Coweta County last year on the GMAS. When we often go to the school board meetings to just, observe, see what's going on. And after, when these test results were published, there was a report at the school board that was all rosy, like, hey, Coweta County's doing okay. We're rebounding after COVID. Things are going well, we're on track. I was like, well, let me see if that's actually the case for our Black students. And so I went and drilled down on this data. And what I found and what I presented to the education committee was somewhat alarming to us. And this is what kind of triggered a lot of discussion. These percentage levels are all below proficiency. So the bold, so here's the grade level, here's ELA and math. As you can see, across the board for elementary and then sixth grade, this is for last year, over 70% of our Black students performed below proficiency. Over 70% were ones and twos. And then for math, as you can see, the numbers trended even higher. In fact, sixth grade math students, 86% of our Black students were ones and twos versus threes and fours. Now I have a few numbers up here just to compare how that measured up to other ethnic groups here in Coweta County. And as you can see, A is Asian, H Hispanic, W is white, and then S is kind of system-wide. We have the lowest performance across the board, the lowest. Unfortunately, I don't have the breakdown by race and ethnicity pre-COVID, but I do have the system numbers pre-COVID. And as you can see, as from a system perspective, we were performing better overall. So unfortunately, I don't have a data point to compare Black student performance pre-COVID, but I could extrapolate if the system was performing better, Black students were probably performing a bit better as well pre-COVID. But here is where we are post-COVID. Now, I'm not going to drill down into every single test and every single grade, but I just wanted to show you kind of a high-level overview of what a few grades looked like. So this is third grade English language arts for Coweta County last year. As you can see, Black Hispanic children, again, greater than 70% were below proficiency. The orange and the yellows mean these students need significant academic support in order to do well in the next grade level. And the same for, this was sixth grade, as you can see, still not where we should be. And for math, a similar story, a little bit better for math for grade 3. We didn't have as many ones, but we did have a ton of twos, right? So still not a great story. And then quite alarming for sixth grade mathematics, 86% below proficiency. So what do we do with this information? Our committee talked about it and we're like, we need to talk to the superintendent. So myself and then Rebecca, co-chair, mom, we sat down with Dr. Horton, the superintendent of schools here in Coweta County, and several experts from his office to talk about this data. I will tell you, to their credit, they are very concerned and they are putting so many resources against closing these gaps. We had a lengthy discussion with them, and since this is public school, they couldn't really say, this is about Black students or not, but we did have some candid discussion with them about what could community organizations do to help support students and close these gaps. And we spoke extensively about 3 areas that were of particular concern to the folks in the room. Number 1 was parent engagement. And what they said was like, look, we can spend all this money on free tutoring, on workshops, on meetings with these children to try to help them. But if I can't get a parent to read an email or call us back or just engage, those resources are wasted. So, they were very transparent in the fact that they needed help engaging with our parents in our community. I will tell you just anecdotally, when just last year, my son was in elementary school, there was a GMAT prep session after school for parents to come and ask questions. The cafeteria was full. I was the only Black parent in the school, in a very diverse school. And I know that, again, anecdotal, I don't have the data to know if Black parents are going to these types of sessions, but that was just a data point for me. And it seems like it was reinforced by what folks in the room were saying about just engaging with our parents, making sure they understand what their child needs and that there are resources out there for them. Another area that they said they could use help is early school readiness. They said we have kindergartners showing up, not having done pre-K, but not just that, right? Kindergartners show up who aren't potty trained, who are nonverbal, who are not accustomed to any type of structure. Obviously haven't experienced any sort of pre-K experience, right? And so that is an issue because that puts the child behind. The speculation being that perhaps, parents, siblings, they're not engaging as much with these young children due to, perhaps too much screen time. That was just, again, speculation. They didn't present any evidence. That was it. But again, this is a kind of a troubling trend that they're seeing in their schools with our kindergartners. And then the last one we talked about was chronic absenteeism. And this is a problem throughout the state post-COVID, but Coweta County is also experiencing this in several of our schools. Kids just aren't showing up. And if kids don't show up to school, they can't get the help they need and they don't do well on tests. I'll stop there. I wanted to see if Rebecca wanted to add anything, as she was in the discussion with me, and she's a retired educator and well-versed in kind of all of these issues. Rebecca?
Well, thank you. Well, I would like to say that I think, as all of you know, this does start with early, 3 and 4 years old. We did have experience. I think some of you already know that for 5 years, we had a nonprofit and ran a pre-K, pre-kindergarten program in the summer. And I can attest to the early readiness problems, because what we did for 2 weeks, we tried to work with students. Teachers were there as well, and the school system backed it, trying to get the students ready behavior-wise to go to kindergarten. And it was interesting, we picked our students very, very carefully, and we worked with parents and students. That is critical at that time. The teachers were very, very interested. Everybody came to work without pay, just to teach them how to do certain things like walk in a line and skip, and then talk to the parents about getting the children to bed on time. And I always have to say, the one thing that always stood out with me was the lady who called in and said, "Y'all are not picking up my child." And I said, the bus went back by your house, but you still didn't pick up my child, and I'm going to have to stop him from coming because you're overlooking him. And I came to find out that the mother did not understand that she had to stand outside so the bus driver could see the child and stop to pick the child up. So for that particular mother, it was very, very important that she know this before school opened. So there are issues that you never really think about. So many issues that our parents have that, well, we can address in certain ways, but sometimes, just one small group, we look at it and you say, this is just insurmountable. But with what's happening tonight and what we would like to do and partner, I think we can make a difference. We have to. There is no choice. We have to make a difference. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So yes, a lot of passion around these topics. This is a starting point. Like Rebecca said, what we discussed with Ms. Brenda is starting first with a public awareness campaign, just really about GMAS. I will tell you again, as a parent and who has a child in public school here in Coweta County, you have to stay engaged, right? You got to answer email, you got to check newsletters, you got to make phone calls, you got to have parent-teacher conferences. If you don't, you end up missing a lot. And what I learned is it's very easy to miss your students' GMAS scores. And I suspect many people don't even know how their child performed on this test. I had to actually go ask for my child's scores Teachers say they send them home with the child. Obviously, things get lost on the way. So I had to go make a special request for my child's scores. And so that's really would be my first recommendation to anyone who has child, grandchild, niece, nephew in Coweta Public Schools. Ask where that child is on their GMATs. Are they a 1, are they a 2, or a 3, or a 4? If they're a 1 or a 2, you got to figure out what extra help this child needs. And what you have to be clear on is, I think the blind spot is sometimes is your child may make, all A's or B's, or just passing everything, right? Because grades are different from the GMAS. My child was making all A's and B's, but I was not satisfied with his scores on the GMAS, and we had to work on that, right? And so, there's grades, because again, there's grade inflation. There are other factors that go into grades. GMAS is the objective. How much has your child mastered? How proficient is your child? And that's what we want to look at. I would also say engage in school resources. I know that several schools are offering after school workshops, clinics on preparing for the GMAS. Obviously in class, there is GMAS prep. This information comes through in emails and newsletters. We got to check them. So it's just critical to stay engaged with your school. There are also free resources on the Georgia Department of Education website. There are sample tests. You can log on and get familiar, comfortable with the format of the test. Your child can, I should say. There's a study guide. There are instructions. I will say for my child, to help him improve, I printed off the sample test for his grade year, and then every weekend I just gave him a few questions to do, just so he could get familiar with it. And his scores improved dramatically. I won't take all the credit. Surely, his teachers had something to do with it. But I think just being familiar with the test is helpful. And then just discussing the importance of the test with your child. Make sure they know this is the time to, every day you should do your best. But, eat a good breakfast, get a good night's sleep, be ready for this test. Know when the test is.
I'd like to interject something right there.
Oh, sure.
The last thing that you said about the sleep. And parents have a hard time now because they are having to deal with technology. They're having to deal with television. They're on the phones all the time and staying up. And it is not easy, but it must be done. In the beginning, just the thing of getting the child to bed, to sleep without any technology around them on time, so that child could get a good night's sleep. Believe me, that's something that many, many, many of our children do not get. That should be emphasized, as well as eating nutritious meals. A big part of the problem would be over if those two things are taken care of.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Very important. And there's a link to the free online resources. We've drafted a couple of flyers, slides that could be distributed. If you all would like that has the link to the free resources with the Department of Education. So, along with this public awareness campaign, we have a lot of work to do, a lot of work that we would like to do. And we've had some discussions at our NAACP general body meeting. And one of the questions was, well, hey, what are other organizations doing in this area? How are other community organizations supporting our students, targeting our communities to help with educational initiatives? And that was a very good question because, we know things here or there. Obviously we have, some members of other organizations on our committee, like Ms. Brenda, Ms. Gracie's here. But, we think it would be very helpful if we could kind of compile a list of educational activities or, camps, workshops, tutors, whatever, that our other local community organizations provide to our students or targeting our communities or parents. So with that in mind, we've established a online form for people to access and to go in and just provide some information about your organization and any educational initiatives that you have in place and that you provide to students here in Coweta. It could be scholarships, it could be, again, workshops, scholarship prep, college application prep, all of those things. It would be helpful to know. Particularly as we as an education committee, we start planning going forward about additional activities we want to do, we can look to that list to see, oh, hey, this organization is already doing it. Perhaps we can support them, send more people their way, or maybe there's an opportunity to partner down the line. So I think we'll have, we have another slide that we can distribute that has this, the link to this form. There's also a QRC here if you would like to access it on the screen. But we're asking for that information to be completed by May 1st. NAACP, we would compile the list, and then interested parties, we'd be happy to share that list with you. And then just a quick plug about the Education Committee. We meet on the second Thursday of each month at 6:30. Our meetings are virtual. We do offer a scholarship of $2,000. Those applications are now open. Please let us know if you would like more information. That application does close April 1st. That is for seniors in Coweta County high schools. We also have a summer program called Ready, Set, Succeed. We love to debate educational issues at our meetings, and we just offer overall camaraderie as a group. So anyone interested in joining the Coweta NAACP or the Coweta NAACP Education Committee, please let us know. Great. That is our presentation. I know we're up on time, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
I would like to ask Becky, how many students you all worked with the summer program that you had for 5 years? How many were you able to serve?
25 to 30. Now, keep in mind that that was over a
25 to 30.
and we engaged the school system. We had bus service, and we engaged teachers who came for no pay because they wanted to see the children who were going to be in their classes and get a good read on those. So it was a great program, I have to say. And the school system did adopt it into their school improvement plan. Now, what's happened after that, I hadn't been involved in that. But I can say they're trying, but probably not like us. We actually went to the neighborhoods. We actually engaged with people and actually, hey, why is your child not here? Well, he overslept. Well, get him up. We'll get the bus driver to go back out there and get him. Those were those kinds of hands-on things. And I have to say the kids were more ready for school and the teachers were ready for them to come to school. So yes, we served breakfast. They had take-home lunches and everything. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because I've said something to you all too about the Head Start program in Coweta County. We lost some slots a few years ago, but Head Start targets your children. They work with parents also. It's important to get some kind of preschool education before starting with the public school curriculum that is out of sight. I mean, they work with the whole child in the context of the whole family. And they have, I know, at least 40 or 50 slots, maybe? I've got to check on that, but this has been going on with Head Start in this county for years. And I'm hoping that in the midst of all of the things that are happening with our kids, that we can somehow maybe advocate for even more slots. I don't know all of the facts behind why we lost so many, but maybe in the long run, we will be able to get more of those preschool slots because that is very helpful. And they train parents to really work with the children and they talk about the importance of it. They do the health, the mental, the mental health, everything with Head Start. So maybe that is one thing that we can tap into, another resource, at least get the community action agencies on the list. And they were invited, and a lot of people were invited, but I see that a lot of them did not come. But I want to thank you and Christina and Dr. Finney for coming on tonight to give us this special presentation. This was impressive. It was a very impressive overview and analysis of how our Black students are performing on the Georgia Milestone Assessment System. And we want to work with you from Neweta. We really want to elevate the importance of this issue. And this particular program is like a first step campaign, as we've said before. We plan to contact the organizations and churches represented tonight for follow-up. And we hope to also contact those that were on the list to, to still keep them on the list and to solicit their services and their input also. And we're hoping over time that working with the NAACP that we can grow this list together so that we will know exactly who we have in the county that work with our parents of school-age children and our school-age children. And with that, I'd like to say that we've got a poll set up, and Nikki, at this time, maybe can give you complete this poll, because this will also help the NAACP know who is doing something. We don't know
Number
what.
one, is your group, organization, or church working with school-age children and or parents of school-age children? And you will simply click there, yes or no. And then the second question is, will your group participate in the NAACP Neweta efforts to bring this issue to the attention of Black communities? And again, you will select yes or no. The third question is a fill in the blank. And so you would just type in the name of your group. So if it is a club, you can just put in Neweta Club, but it will be able to help measure what are the organizations that are participating in this presentation today. So you should be able to see the results now. And you see for number one, we have 100% of our participants answering yes. Your group is working with school-age children and or parents. And for number two, the majority of the answers, 92% answered yes. Will your group be working with bringing attention to this issue in your communities? So, and then we have 100% on the third one answered, and I will share those results with you to the Neweta Club and to the NAACP later if you like. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki, and thank all of you for participating in the poll. And I wanted to just make one more statement. Neweta plans to direct attention to the NAACP Georgia Milestone Assessment System Initiative and we are hoping that we can implement our Black Awareness Pageant starting in 2025, and we're starting some activities in 24 to lead toward that. But we have an education component for the Black Awareness Pageant where we have tests, we have a study guide, and all of that. And it would be easy for us to incorporate some things that will direct attention to both the contestants in the Black Awareness Pageant as well as their parents. We can easily do that. And that's one of the things that we can do in our continued programming. We don't have to, let's say, try anything brand new, but we can integrate it into the programming that we already have. And that's what we're hoping that some of the other community organizations and perhaps even churches to do those things to bring attention to this issue. And we want to make sure that the NAACP's brand is strong in the county, and hopefully everybody will participate. There will be follow-up activities, and we hope that you all will go online and complete the form that Christina has prepared for you. So with this, I want to thank everybody for coming, and we will now have announcements and closing remarks by our first Vice President, Radidra Hill.
Thank you, Brenda. And thank you, Cynthia and Christina and Rebecca for that wonderful presentation. Our credits and resources for this presentation are as follows. Syracuse and Cultural Workers Web Store National Women's History Alliance, Wikipedia for our Mary Ann Carey, Francis E. W. Harper, Mary Church Terrell, and Ada Harper, our presentations. Neweta has plans to host the Mother's Day Luncheon in May. These are our announcements. The Black Awareness Pageant is scheduled to resume in 2025 with startup activities this year. This is a brief summary about our organization. Neweta NANBPWC, the Black Awareness Pageant signature fundraiser and educational project. We are mandated to observe Founders Day, Women's History Month, and the Mary Singletary Emerging Artist Competition. The NANBPWC Incorporated continues the LETS programming, which is leadership, entrepreneurship, technology, and service. Service encompasses health, education, employment, and economic development. We work with a chartered Neweta Youth Club and are looking forward to a membership increase in both the youth and adult clubs. It is an honor to work with our local NAACP unit, and we look forward to the support from Coweta organization churches as our guests tonight. As Brenda said, this special presentation being opened up to community groups servicing Coweta represents the first phase of a public awareness campaign on behalf of our Coweta NAACP unit. We offer our gratitude and thanks for the work of the NAACP members, the work of the organization and churches represented, teachers, and other community volunteers. We hope you've enjoyed our 2024 Women's History Month program. Exploring the historical context of the four honorees has been inspiring. Imagine how difficult it was for them to make such dynamic contributions during the slavery and Jim Crow eras. Again, thanks to all the guests for sharing your time with us. As always, thank you, Neweta members, for your cooperation. This ends our program. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Radidra.